All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to SPX 2022. My name is Lindsay Brown, and I am thrilled to welcome back to this unique expo experience for the third year in a row, Microline Surgical. We're going to talk today about the total cost of ownership when it comes to switching from reusable to disposable laparoscopic products and the impact that that can have on your department. Something that rings true in every discussion, every setting, is the end user perspective. That perspective is incredibly powerful. And so I'm excited to get into that today as well. Joining me for this discussion in the beginning is Joseph Lisenby. And Joseph is the regional sales manager for the Southeast area. Joining us a little bit later is Melissa Gifford, sterile processing manager at Somerville Medical Center. For right now, though, I want to welcome Joe onto this discussion. Joe, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Lindsay, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. It's good to see you again. It's been a whole year since SPX happened. Can you believe it?
I know. It feels like 5 with what's going on out here in the world.
I bet. Well, we're really excited to hear more about Microline. And I'd love for you to get us started today by giving us a detailed overview of who Microline is and why your solution is so important.
Sure, absolutely. So Microline's story really starts back in 1987 with a reposable scissor. Is kind of where the story starts. And we have since expanded our portfolio most recently over the past 4 or 5 years to include all reposable laparoscopic instruments. So a reusable handle with various disposable tips. We call the platform a total cost of ownership approach to laparoscopic instrumentation. It's kind of an interesting story, interesting approach. It starts in Beverly, Massachusetts. Everything is manufactured right here in the United States. And we actually have the old Monopoly building. Monopoly Brothers building is our headquarters. Each room is community chest or free parking, or one of the various Monopoly board locations. But that is that's home office, Beverly, Massachusetts. We now have about 40 or so direct reps throughout the United States. We recently transitioned the Southeast from a distributor-based model to direct reps, and that includes about 8 territories, including South Carolina, bringing on board Kent Turberville, the local rep there, and at Somerville Medical Center. But our approach, it has a few different unique concepts, starting with being able to streamline a laparoscopic tray. And what that means is being able to take 12, 13, 14 different instruments, most of which go unused for a traditional laparoscopic case. Maybe it's a lap chole, a hernia case, a TLH, or various procedures where only 3 or 4 instruments are actually used from the tray, and streamline that down to just about 4 or 5 handles, pulling your tips according to the case. I mean, what that does is it helps to cater to SPDs, ongoing activities every day, in turning around laparoscopic trays or sending multiple trays into an OR when an instrument is broken or missing from the tray, and allowing the OR to only pull just those specific tips according to the case. So it helps streamline efficiencies in sterile processing. It helps streamline efficiencies in the OR. It also caters to the surgeon. The surgeon always gets what they need for every case, so we're not taking anything away from them. As well as surgeons don't stay put for their entire careers at one hospital. So there's a coming and going of surgeons and preferences, and the tray never has to change. We would just adjust the tip according to the surgeon's preference. All the handles in the tray stay the same, just with those 4 or 5 pieces. So that's kind of the first concept, is being able to streamline the tray. Our second concept is being able to contain your costs. And what we mean by that is repair and replacement costs of your laparoscopic instruments are now, on a capital side, they're very low. and via disposable tip, you're no longer worried about a floppy Maryland, so to speak, or a broken grasper, or anything of that sort. So containing your costs is our third concept, or excuse me, second concept. Our third concept is it revolves around helping support the hospital's efforts to reduce surgical site infections via throwing away part of the risk, which lies in the hinges and the grasping or dissecting abilities of the tip itself, which we've been told by most customers, especially in sterile processing departments, that is the riskiest part of the instrument or most concerning part of the instrument, where the dead sterile bioburden can lie and makes it into the next case. We've also recently built out a fourth concept in the way of disposables and billings. And there's a potential for a reimbursement that varies from facility to facility, but there's four different key concepts that we work off of that represent our platform there.
Joe, thanks for giving that background information. That's an incredible solution that you offer. One thing that I do want to focus on a little bit more in depth is really why hospitals are experiencing overburdened trays. And kind of that concept of what an overburdened tray is and what kind of problems that causes for both the operating room and for the sterile processing department. Can you lead us through that a little bit?
Sure. In regards to overburden trays and the issues that are caused there, when you have 12, 13, 14 take apart instruments, usually there are 2, 3, or 4 pieces. You have upwards of 50 different types of or pieces to clean there, whether it's a rod with a ball and clevis, a sheath for insulation, and all of these workings plugging into a handle. All of that has to come apart to be cleaned, scrubbing the graspers and dissectors, and visual inspections of all those pieces to make sure nothing is bent or broken. All adds additional time to turning around these trays in the decontamination side, and as well as on the sterile side, on the clean side. And this is all before the instruments can go back into the trays and into the autoclaves to be for the final step to be sterilized. So those seconds and minutes all add up, considering you're turning over from facility to facility. It varies, but could be dozens of trays a day. Slow sterile processing down creates more of a list. And there's always something in sterile processing for these folks to do. It's not just laparoscopic instruments. So every minute they save on a lap tray over here, something else can be done elsewhere. Time can be better spent than taking these pieces apart and putting them back together. And that all correlates to OR times as well. If a case is in process and a instrument is broken or subpar to the surgeon's likings for any reason, or missing, an additional tray has to be sent up and opened. And if the sterile processing department is working on other things, which they always are, that delays OR times and can create headaches in the OR. So.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think is really important to consider is that studies show as low as 17% instrument utilization in the operating room. And so when you have, trays that have extra instrumentation in it, not only does that lead to, like you said prior, sterile processing department having to kind of carry the burden of reprocessing all of those unused instruments, but it goes into chemistry waste, it goes into water waste, it goes into wasted time spent, tuning into those instruments that weren't even used in the first place. So, that concept of overburdened trays, yes, it impacts the operating room, but it certainly kind of has that trickle down effect to the sterile processing department as well. You did mention briefly at the beginning kind of the challenges of infection prevention. Can you give a little bit more detail about what you meant by that?
Yeah, so in the sterile processing department, there's in regards to a laparoscopic instrument, the most cumbersome, we've been told, the most cumbersome part of the laparoscopic instrument is probably those hinges in the grasper itself, which which will which is where that bioburden tends to lie, going in the instruments going into a patient, grasping, dissecting, and cutting. The hinges are the nooks and crannies, so to speak, of that lap instrument. The that's the headache ridden part for a say a decontamination scrub tech is working into all of those hinges, maybe even hidden places within the instrument where that's where the bioburden can lie. You're no longer concerned with those hinges as a disposable tip has the hinges in the grasp or dissector kind of built in, so to speak.
The goal, obviously, with this whole total cost of ownership conversation and with the idea of switching from reusable to disposable laparoscopic instrumentation is really the idea of minimizing the healthcare associated infections, minimizing the risk of surgical site infections. Approximately $30,000 is the average cost of a surgical site infection. And so when we talk about the ideas of mitigating those risks and minimizing the opportunity for those surgical site infections of happening, this idea, this concept of going to more disposable products to eliminate that risk is a really, really critical one. So thank you for calling that out. One of the things too that I think is an important part of this conversation, we talked about some of the problems in the operating room with overburdened trays. We talked about some of the problems in the sterile processing department. We talked about the challenges of infection prevention, but there are also problems in materials management when you're having to deal with overburdened trays. Can you speak to that a little bit?
So materials number one concern is more is the cap on the capital side, which is the purchasing of these laparoscopic instrumentation. It relates back to repair and replacement costs, which with a low capital piece and the disposable tip, it's helping to alleviate some of those concerns there with materials.
Awesome. Joe, this is such an important conversation because obviously this conversation hits multiple areas of a healthcare facility. And so if you can sort of picture making one change from this reusable line to a disposable line, this one change that you can make for your department can have that impact on such a wide level in your healthcare facility. I'm excited to get into the customer perspective of this transition. But before we do that, Joe, can you lead us through this unique platform and talk about the issues that it solves?
So the it solves numerous issues, and it really on a hospital to hospital basis, the issues always change, right? It can be, as we referenced, broken instrumentation, right? If depending on what type of lap instruments are being used, they have a tendency to break in different areas, whether it's the handle, the shaft, the sheath, or the grasp or dissector itself. Can be an ongoing repurchasing um, caveat. The overloaded trays, as we suggested, is in 9 times out of 10, that is probably the number one solution that or key benefit that our platform has to offer, as well as helping to contain some of those repair and replacement costs. But they, on a facility to facility basis, it really varies. And I think in relation to Somerville Medical Center, there were their concern at the time, or their concern was a what was supposed to be a reusable type of instrument tended to break often enough towards almost a disposable like, but not really. So kind of make a limited use type of product, but it was a headache for everybody involved, from sterile processing, having to put orders in to replace that product, and I'm sure for the OR, for the case when it was supposed to be functioning and it wasn't, and multiple trays were opened, or I'm sure a slew of concerns that we were able to help there.
All right. So, this is a great segue. I am so excited to hear from Melissa at Somerville Medical Center. Melissa, welcome to this conversation.
Hello, thank you.
Yes. Like I said at the beginning, I think the end user perspective is very powerful. It's very, very impactful. So Melissa, could you tell us what are some of the issues that your department experienced before transitioning to Microline's product line?
Our big one was we were constantly holding trays down or putting trays up missing instruments because we were either waiting for them to come back from repair, waiting for them to come in because we had to order new ones. So the trays didn't have what they needed.
Okay, that is a very severe issue, especially when you're, working with different cases, different case loads per day. Making sure to have the instrumentation you need is a critical part of that. How has the Microline solution helped in terms of both efficiency, in terms of cost, and in any other ways that you can share with us?
We haven't had a tray down. Everything is working.
That's powerful. Just right there. That's powerful.
We've never had any issues with the Microline. They've never been, since we've started this a couple months ago, it's never needed any repairs. They've always been, insulation's always been good. There's no broken. We don't have to worry about tips. So our trays have been up and complete.
Have you had any specific feedback from the OR since making this change?
Well, there's been no complaints.
Okay. Which, as a manager of a department, makes your life a lot easier.
For sure.
Excellent. Are there any additional things that you can say about Microline in terms of added value, service levels, the attention paid to your department and your needs, anything along those lines?
Kent and Joe are awesome. We love working with them. They're here whenever we need them. They've been just amazing to work with.
Awesome. I love hearing that. I know there are horror stories out there of working with vendors who are not as tuned into your needs as a manager of a department. And so it's awesome to hear feedback like that about the Microline team. Melissa, one other question I had for you is, in your mind, what sets Microline apart from your other vendor partners?
We have wonderful vendors, so that's, a huge deal. The Microline lab instruments handles that we use, it's a big added value since they're super easy to clean. So they save us a huge amount of time in decon. And then it saves us half the time in assembly because all we have to do is worry about the handles. We don't have to worry about making sure we have the right Marilyns, or the right graspers. We just have to worry about the handles.
Which, as a manager of a department, making sure that your staff, know how to inspect, know how to prepare instrumentation, it probably alleviates some time for you in training on those types of instrumentation as well.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, wonderful. I know that you mentioned that you've implemented this only about a couple of months ago, and I love to hear that you haven't had any issues since. How do you foresee the next couple of months going as more and more time passes, as you get used to this transition to disposable laparoscopic tips?
I don't see any issues. I see it just getting easier and easier, and as we have more doctors come and use the instruments, it's super. They just have to worry about what tips they want.
Absolutely. Awesome. All right. Well, Joe, I feel like that's a pretty rave review for your team. So congratulations on that. Melissa, thank you so much for giving us your perspective on making this transition to the Microline solution. We're excited to hear how it goes over the next couple of months. And, all signs point to it continuing to get better and better and easier for your team and for the surgeons that come on board. So congratulations to your team for making an awesome step in patient safety. And thank you for joining us today.
Nice.
Awesome. All right, Joe, what an incredible customer testimonial that was on not only the value of the products and the solutions that you provide, but of the service level of your team. It's always good when you have a conversation and there's nothing bad that can be said or even thought about. So kudos to your team.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Quick word. Kent's been out there 8 months, so this is awesome. Very exciting.
Nice. Already making an impact. So let's do me a favor. I want to make sure that we leave the audience tuned in with what they need to know about what's most important about transitioning to a Microline solution. Can you give just an overview of what that is and what takeaways that you'd like people to walk away with?
Sure. I think a Microline transition number one, may not be for everybody. And it all starts in sterile processing with a high level consultative approach to your trays. Have a look at the trays, review count sheets, understand SPD's problems, current problems, issues, understand the OR's current issues. And those are all, those are multiple departments. We talk a lot about sterile processing, but the OR is going to provide additional feedback as well. And I think upfront, having a full discovery report, so to speak, before deciding that this approach is best for you, it is key. And that starts with working with a local representative.
All right, you heard it here first, everyone. Joe, it's been a sincere pleasure talking with you, talking with Melissa. Stay tuned for more information through this SPX 2022 Expo feature on Microline Surgical. Thanks again for joining me today, Joe.
Thanks. Thank you.
All right, have a great expo.
You too.